let's talk about Jack Yanda. This video is going to be a little bit different because, unlike most other videos, this is going to be divided into parts. That's because just like most main characters in NameLess, Jack has a fully fleshed out backstory. And with that being said, let's get into it. Jack was born on the southernmost part of continent Igalia, the eastern continent. More specifically, he was born at the very edge of Intok Kingdom's capital, in a very large yet narrow region that most people never wander into. Raised by two loving parents, Ryler and Lores Yanda, Jack grew up to be a rather ordinary kid, or as ordinary as one can get when living in the wilderness. Hunting with his father and sparring with his mother, Jack Yanda had a very close ties with his family. There wasn't almost anything that they didn't do together, and they held this bond until Jack turned about 6 years old. Upon turning 6, Jack's family was met with an untimely end. A monster known as the Goblin Lord, a monster that had been sealed within a closely guarded dungeon back during the war with the gods, had broken free and was claimed to have started ravaging multiple cities in the process. I'll explain the Goblin Lord and the war with the gods in a totally different video, because there's a lot of lore. Moving on, Ryler and Lores went out to take care of the problem, or at least to assist other adventurers in putting the goblin down. The mother died in the process, but Ryler managed to make it back to his son, albeit severely injured. However, upon returning to Jack, Ryler was never the same. From the moment that he returned to Jack, he was already dying. And in his final moments, he would spout things that were not there and seemingly ramble about nothing. Or at least nothing according to Jack, because he couldn't understand any of it. Eventually, Ryler died in Jack's arms. Unsure of what to do, Jack eventually had to bury his father. And then at the age of 6 years old, Jack was left alone in the world, with nobody to call family. Distraught, confused, saddened, Jack went for a run. No idea where he was going. Eventually, he happened to cross 8 stone pillars in the shapes of warriors. These warriors were all different shapes, different sizes, but they were made out of stone. It was here that Jack stayed until he could gather himself enough to stand back up. It was here that he met a man named Amon Belphegor. Upon meeting the man, he stayed and talked with him in a heart-to-heart conversation about death, reincarnation, and how his parents truly weren't gone, and how the memory of them lived on with him. After saying all this, Amon disappeared. An hour after Amon's disappearance, a young man by the name of Mako Kunzite arrives on the scene. Jack had happened upon Mako by chance about 6 months prior when he cut the young man out from the belly of a weed gecko. A weed gecko is a type of monster that resides within the forests surrounding Intok. The two begin talking, and upon learning about his friends, because Mako considers Jack a friend, circumstances, he invites him to come and train with him. Mako stakes his dreams and his goals for the future to Jack, claiming how he wanted to be the next Rift King. For context, the Rift King is the one who holds the most worlds and is also the most influential, most powerful mage within that current generation. Think of like the Wizard King, the Hokage, or the Pirate King. Mako's desire was to build the strongest guild in existence and stand at the top. Jack, having no real goal or dream of his own due to his parents' passing, decides to take him up on the offer, and the two become rivals in a quest to see who can reach the top first. So, kind of like your standard shonen. No parents, try and go to the top. I'll stop. So after taking Mako up on his offer, the two head back to Intok's capital, mainly a place called known as Isle Shimura. There, Jack would train for the next 4 years until the time he turned 10. Lived, slept, ate, everything was done on Isle Shimura. Above all else, non-stop training. This is Itachi. Say hi to Itachi. Anyways, upon him and Mako Kunzite both reaching 10 years old, Jack Yanda and Mako decide to take the adventure exam. Having undergone rigorous and non-stop training for the last 4 years, they believed they were ready to succeed. However, they did schedule for different days. Jack would take one day, and then the very next day, Mako would go. It was sort of like a friendly competition to see who would get a higher score. Then came the adventure exam. For a reference for the adventure exam and the trials, go see my other video explaining the adventure exam. Back then, one of the main adventurers was known as Alexna. She was an elf with purple hair. Back then, she worked as a receptionist. She's important to the story, so always I'm mentioning her. Alexna has the ability to see the aura. The aura in question is pretty much how much potential you have. The bigger your aura, the more potential you have, or the stronger you are. It really depends on what color your aura is and how big your aura is. Upon Jack arriving on the scene, she realizes Jack doesn't have an aura, which she had never seen before. So she immediately takes an interest. And just like that, the trials get underway. The first trial is to measure how much magic one possesses by placing your hand against a manga mirror. Unfortunately, Jack fails the first test. Though meeting the score needed for an average adventurer to pass, he falls beneath what is required for those below the ages of 13. However, come the second test, he obliterates everything that regarding physical stats. Speed, dodging, and punching, he completely annihilates the competition. After utterly obliterating the goblin guards within the second test, he is sent on to the third test, the combat assessment. This test is run by a proctor of any WGC's choosing, but this proctor is known as Powder Mapel. Powder Mapel is, to keep it bluntly, a prick and an asshole. He was only assigned because the WGC was short on people that they could use at that point in time. Due to the Powder's reputation, he was required to wear a limiter, something that obviously, how it sounds, is to limit your strength so you don't overdo it. Powder, in his arrogance, kept it at the lowest setting because he didn't believe any of the contestants could actually do anything above the lowest setting. Flora and Alexna didn't bother correcting him about this irregular rookie because he was being an asshole and sexist to them. He was talking about, oh yeah, I'll make you my bitch and stuff like that, and so they didn't bother. They set him up pretty much. But anyways, upon starting the exam, Jack wields a katana and immediately goes all out. Palder is appalled and immediately gets his shit rocked. Because again, in his own arrogance, he was not expecting anyone to be that good. His guard was lower and his confidence was way too high. So after getting knocked down the first time, he immediately changes his setting to one rank higher, and then continues the match. This time, Jack again picks up the pace, but Pollard is able to almost match him this time. But again, Jack outmaneuvers him with insane physical capabilities and is able to damage him once again. Again, Pollard, again, being so arrogant, and this time he's just angry because he's getting humiliated, hits the emergency release just as Jack is trying to make another step forward. The emergency release is pretty much a last resort, which was not supposed to be active. In short, with the emergency release, all that limited power explodes outwards. And then Jack was flung backwards and severely damaged to the point where it was almost fatal. And even after almost fatally wounding this man, he immediately fails Jack, and Jack fails the trials. In fact, Jack would have lost his life that day had it not been the quick thinking of Flora and Alexna. They had to use an emergency super elixir, one of the strongest potion they had on hand, in order to save Jack's life. Though this did save Jack, this also put Jack into crippling debt. Some 16 million gold. This was later rectified as 8 million would later be put on Powder Mapel due to the fact that it was initially his fault. So following his resurrection, Jack had slinked away in defeat. Because as far as he was concerned, he believed that he had genuinely just not been good enough to cut it as an adventurer. And he would have to wait until he was eventually, 13 to try again. This will be continued in part 2. If you want to read NameLess, you go to patreon.com/ShadowDrev. First 30 chapters are completely free. And yeah, I'll continue this in the immediately next video. So, see you guys then. Take it easy.